All right, so before we jump in, let me welcome you to the Deep Penetration Podcast. My name is Danny, and I am a self-esteem and love coach that works with gay and bisexual men. So please make sure you are subscribing to the podcast and all my other platforms as well. If you want to hear more content like this episode, I will provide you with all the information in the description of this video down below, and I will also provide you with a link to a free gift that you do not want to miss out on. Trust me, it is chock full of really good information, specifically around dating as a gay and bisexual man. So, as you can see by the title of the episode, we are talking about bisexuality, right? And this is an episode that is near and dear to my heart because I am bisexual myself. And the reason for why I decided to create this episode is because I have worked with many bisexual men who do not feel seen, heard, or understood within the gay community. And I myself can relate to this, right? I can relate to these feelings because I have also experienced my fair share of criticism and discrimination and honestly, quite frankly, hatred from members of the gay community and also the heterosexual community, right? And as a bisexual man, I have experienced rejection, like I said, from both communities, which did result in me feeling lost for quite some time. I never really understood like the disgust that people had or have with people who identify as bisexual, especially since gay men have experienced that level of hatred before. So why perpetuate it, right? It doesn't really make sense to me. Never really made sense to me. And to be honest with you, I can understand a little more from the heterosexual community because many of them don't understand the concept of sexuality being on a spectrum, but from members of the LGBTQ plus community, like crazy. So that inspired me to look into the history of bisexuality a little bit more, dynamics within the gay community, and just generally speaking, common misconceptions that I would like to dispel in this episode. So make sure you are sticking around because we're going to learn something today. So let's define bisexuality, right? Let's start with that. And in its simplest terms, it's an attraction to more than one gender. And for the purposes of this episode, we are going to discuss bisexuality in terms of being attracted to men and women. That being said, I want to acknowledge that there are different forms of bisexuality, right? There are different identities of bisexuality. It's what's referred to as bi plus, and that encompasses pansexuality, omnisexual, polysexual, fluid, and many other ways of identifying. But like I said, for the purposes of this episode, based on my own personal experiences as well, I'm going to define bisexuality as being attracted to men and women. Interestingly enough, it has been established for quite some time, and it was first publicly discussed in the early, I think it was the earliest, what is that? It was in the earliest, it was in the early 20th century by a German sexologist named Magnus Hirschfeld. I probably slaughtered that. I apologize if you are German. Please leave a comment down below with like how to pronounce that phonetically. I would appreciate it. But again, I acknowledge I probably slaughtered it. But the important thing here is that he hypothesized that sexuality was on a continuum, right? And then after that, we had Alfred Kinsey and then Fritz Klein and Michael Shively and John DiCecco, I think was his name. And I know you're probably sitting here being like, okay, like what do all these people like? Why mention this? A lot of people will argue that sexuality is on a binary, and it's not, and I'm not going to get into that whole argument because it can get super complicated and there are multiple different perspectives and opinions on the subject. And that's not what this episode is about. I'm merely bringing it up because I want people to understand that sexuality is on a spectrum. On one side, you have homosexual, and on the other side, you have heterosexual, and a whole lot of variations in between. And in between, we have bisexuality. I personally have known that I was bisexual since I was young. I may not have necessarily known the definition, but I knew that I was different. I knew I wasn't straight. I knew I wasn't gay because I always had an attraction to both men and women. And on top of that, my attraction varied depending on the person, right? And I have always said this, and I will continue to say this: I'm attracted to the person, not their appendage. I dated girls in high school because, for one, I wasn't out of the closet, but also because I was physically and emotionally attracted to them. I dated my fiance, who was a woman, for 13 years, and we met freshman year of college, my freshman year of college. We did break up a year after we got together because I did come out to her as bisexual so that I could explore my sexuality. And even though I thoroughly enjoyed that experience with men during that time, right, I knew that my story with my then ex was not over yet. So we got back together and we stayed together for another 11 years or so. After that breakup, right after 13 years, I started dating again. And I met a lot of interesting men. I met some women, but I found myself more interested in seriously dating men, right? And currently I am in a relationship with my partner, and we've been together for 2 years now, a little over 2 years now. Here's why I mention this. Being bisexual does not make us overly promiscuous, doesn't make us untrustworthy, confused, or any of the other stigmas that have been assigned to us from both the gay community and the heterosexual community. You know, we are no different than any other person out there who finds themselves looking for love and connection, be it physical, mental, or emotional, or even spiritual, right? And I can honestly say I have never cheated on my partners, on any of them. Now, will I sit here and say that I will never do that or I never would? No, because I've also with age come to learn that, never say never, and because I can't predict the future, but I have a pretty damn good track record so far. I would consider myself somebody who is emotionally intelligent. I would consider myself somebody who's communicative, vulnerable, empathetic, and I'd like to think that I'm a pretty genuine and authentic person. At least my friends and my family and my partner would say that. I'm still good friends with my ex. I have a solid group of friends that I've had the honor to call my friends since I was 16 years old, and I'm now 36. I'm close with my parents, and I know that this sounds like I'm bragging, but I say all of this to dispel any common misconceptions about bisexual men. When it comes to the topic of promiscuity, I absolutely had my fun when I was single, but I was always respectful. I was always communicative. And to be 100% honest, my body count is far less than many of the people that I've met, my friends that are gay, and even my friends that are heterosexual, right? And I don't say that to shame any of them, because there is no reason to. They have every right to enjoy their bodies and express themselves in any way that they see fit. But again, the reason why I say this is because I want to dispel these stigmas and misconceptions and lies about bisexual men, right? That all we care about is sex, and that we're confused and we are lost and that we just haven't made our minds up yet, or any of those things. So what are some of these stigmas and the common misconceptions? There are 3 primary misconceptions that I hear all the time. The first one is bisexuality equals promiscuity. Wrong. Just because you're bisexual doesn't mean that you want to sleep with every single person that you come across. Does that open up our possibility to connection with more people? Yes, because we are able to be in a relationship with a man and a woman. So obviously that kind of opens up the sheer amount of people that we can connect with and we can meet. The second misconception is that bisexuality is a phase. It's not a phase. It's a legitimate sexual orientation, right? It's part of the LGB for bisexuality, TQ plus community, right? The letters that are there, and the people that it represents. Is it true that there are some people out there who are not fully comfortable with their sexuality yet, and they are using bisexuality as a stepping stone? Sure, that is a possibility. I don't fault them for it. I don't dislike them for it. And I don't invalidate them for that either. It's a process. Coming out is a process for every single person. What I can say is that person is acknowledging that their sexuality is fluid and they're figuring it out and they're curious, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the major issue here, and I've had this discussion with many people who identify as gay in the LGBTQ plus community, is this kind of frustration or anger with having to embrace their sexuality completely and come out as gay, and everything that they experience throughout the process of coming out as gay, and they feel like being bi is a cop-out, right? Because it's like having one foot in and one foot out of the closet. And that's simply just not true, right? My experience with coming out as bisexual, I think, was as emotionally traumatic as any other person who is coming out lesbian, gay, trans, pan, whatever the case may be. We share that experience. So to invalidate or to belittle somebody because you feel like your experience was worse or more intense than the next person is a very narrow view. And I would challenge you to open up your mind a little bit more when it comes to that. The third thing here, and the third common misconception, is bisexuality means attraction to both genders equally. This one can get confusing for people, right? Because the way that I kind of like to describe it is that it's on a sliding scale. It depends on the individual. It depends on the person. For a lot of individuals who identify as bisexual, right? So you may be physically attracted to men, but you may be more emotionally attracted to women. You may envision yourself being sexual with a man, but being in a long-term committed relationship with a woman, and vice versa. There's percentage breakdowns that I kind of like to talk about. And again, I don't like to kind of pigeonhole or box people into like a specific percentage, but sometimes it's 70-30, 80-20, 50-50. Like, it really just kind of depends on the individual and what they are most comfortable with. So if you're someone who has ever considered dating someone who is bisexual, you are currently dating someone who is bisexual or have dated someone, I want to provide you with some tips for how to do that in a healthy way, right? So number one, understand bisexuality, right? So educate yourself. First and foremost, take the time to educate yourself about bisexuality, what it means to be bisexual, right? The only way that you can really connect with somebody on a deeper level is if you come to understand them. And in order to understand them, sometimes you have to educate yourself, right? So understand that bisexuality means an attraction to more than one gender, right? And this attraction can vary in its intensity of expression. It's not about being confused or indecisive. It's a legitimate and valid sexual orientation. The second thing here is acknowledge fluidity, right? Recognize that sexual orientations can be fluid. They can vary, right? So just because someone identifies as bisexual doesn't mean their attraction to different genders is always equal or constant. So be open to the fact that their experiences, his experiences, and attractions may evolve over a period of time, just like any individual, right? We change with time. Our needs and our expectations change with time. Be open and honest, right? Have open and honest communication. Discuss expectations. This can include talking about what relationship dynamic or structure works best for you, right? So is that monogamy? Is that polyamory? Is that an open relationship? Being very clear on those things from the very beginning, and make sure that the both of you are on the same page to avoid any kind of misunderstandings. Ask questions. That's one of the biggest things. I think a lot of people are always afraid to ask their partner or somebody they're dating about bisexuality because they don't want to sound ignorant or naive or any of those things. Ask questions, but do it respectfully, right? You don't have to be rude about it. You don't have to be demeaning or belittling in that process. It's natural to have questions, particularly around bisexuality if you're not familiar with it, right? But again, you want to make sure that you're asking them with respect and not with judgment. You want to avoid prying or making assumptions, right? Let them share what they are most comfortable sharing. You want to build trust, right? And security, as with any other relationship. But trust is key, right? It's the fundamental in any relationship. But it is especially important in this dynamic. Do not let stereotypes about bisexuality lead you to doubt your partner's fidelity or their commitment to you, right? Trust them as your partner. You want to avoid ignorant stereotypes, you know, um, understand what they are, right? Educate yourself on what some of the common stereotypes and stigmas are. And if you don't know, ask your partner so that you guys are on the same page, and avoid questioning their loyalty, or suggesting that their bisexuality makes them more likely to cheat. Remember, bisexuality does not equate to infidelity. And if you are having those concerns without your partner giving you any reason to feel that way, that's a you problem, right? That's something that you need to unpack and figure out for yourself, why you have that underlying insecurity that is there. What else is there? What would I say is important to me as a bisexual man? And somebody who is dating me, or me dating somebody else too. I think affirmation, right? Affirmation and validation, I think, helps to build trust as well. And I think that can be very beneficial in a relationship, especially when it comes to a relationship with somebody who is bisexual, who has already experienced a lot of stigmatization and discrimination and criticism and judgment and all of those things, which actually piggybacks into my next point, which is addressing jealousy, right? Any kind of jealousy or insecurity. Understand your feelings, right? It's normal to feel jealousy or insecurity in any relationship, but you want to reflect on it, right? And you want to identify whether your insecurities or your jealousy is coming from a place of lacking trust in your partner for their actions, or lacking trust in your partner for how they identify, right? Because then there's a big difference there. Are you insecure and feeling the need to be a little bit more in control within that relationship because you have allowed a stereotype to, how do I put this? You have allowed a stereotype to represent your partner, the person that you are in a relationship with, when in reality, he may not show any of those things. So address that and try addressing those things together, right? Because I think that can be helpful, and I think that can actually help you grow a stronger bond with one another. Focus on your relationship. Focus on that unique connection. What makes you guys special? What do you guys enjoy about each other? What are your strengths within that relationship? What are some things that you would say need to be worked on in the relationship? And work on those things together. That's going to be very, very important. Boundaries, like any other relationship, I think that's also going to be very important. I talk a lot about boundaries in a lot of my other videos. So if you are unfamiliar with boundaries and how to set boundaries, I would highly recommend checking out some of the other videos that I have on my YouTube channel when it comes to that. Or just feel free to drop a comment down below and ask specifically about boundaries, and I will answer that for you. And finally, just celebrate the relationship, right? Embrace the positives, enjoy it. Being in a relationship with somebody, and this is me probably being totally partial because I am bisexual, but I think being in a relationship with somebody who's bisexual can be one of the healthiest relationships that you have, in the sense that an individual who identifies as bisexual has the ability to connect with their masculine and their feminine. They can be that protector, they can be that provider, they can provide that stability, but they also have a level of emotional intelligence and the ability to be vulnerable and connect with emotion in a way that helps to steer the relationship in a positive, healthy way. Now, that's not the case for every single person, and there are definitely people out there who are unbalanced and have work to do. That is not what I'm saying. But more often than not, I find that individuals who identify as bisexual are pretty balanced individuals. So I hope that kind of unpacks some of the common misconceptions. I hope that dispelled some of the stereotypes and the negative misconceptions about bisexuality. And I hope that you found some of those tips and recommendations helpful if you are dating somebody who is bisexual or plan on dating somebody who is bisexual. I hope you guys are having an amazing day, and I will see you in the next episode.